from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. If you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And lots to discuss today. Of course, over the weekend, Israel was hit with a barrage of missiles from Iran. And we're going to jump into that shortly. Of course, we also have today, we thought many on this program predicted and opined that there would not be a trial for President Trump before Election Day. But lo and behold, we have a trial that started today. And that is the Alvin Bragg case, the case where they said, no, sir, you paying your lawyer $130,000 for an expense that he made on your behalf to pay off Stormy Daniels to create a non-disclosure agreement so that she would be quiet to protect his family, et cetera, et cetera. This constituted a campaign expense. They've argued in return that this was not a campaign expense, that this was a legitimate legal expense, and that's how they listed it in there as an expense. And this triggered the entire fake, phony fraud case against Donald Trump by Alvin Bragg. And here we are today with them actually going to trial. Some now saying that Donald Trump won't be allowed to attend his son Barron's high school graduation because of the date of this trial. Really just, it's just crazy to see that this is actually happening and the extent that it's occurring in this day and age. It just blows me away. But we're going to get to that, and of course, we will have some commentary on what Biden did and how he responded, or the lack of response and the lack of support for Israel regarding the attack from Iran. I want to start off with some audio from Trump. Now, Trump, of course, took to social media to make his case, as did many Trump surrogates, and part of what I want to share with you is President Trump saying that we should all be horrified by this corrupt system of justice. Now, I couldn't agree with that anymore. And I always say, a lot of people say, look, they're coming for him, which means they're coming for you. And I just think to myself, yes, that's true. But just imagine what they'll do to you, right? If this is what they're doing to him, a guy with some money, with some influence, a guy who was a former president. So it's a strange thing in America that we have come down this road, something that's reminiscent to what you'd see in other in historical accounts or in third world countries, show trial, if you will. Just alarming, to say the least. Listen to former President Trump.
Our nation is right now crossing a very dangerous threshold in the middle of a presidential election, right smack in the middle. Crooked Joe Biden and his entire corrupt party are staging a show trial of their leading political opponent, me. And they want me to go on trial. It's totally crooked. It's totally corrupt. It's never been done before. In a completely illegitimate act of election interference, they're trying to jail their opposition as if they were Stalinist Russian or communist Chinese or Castro's Cuba or socialist Venezuela. As you witness this Biden trial, I ask all Americans to remember that this is not just about me. This is about our country, and this is about you. Whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or independent, we should all be horrified by the corruption of the system of justice. What's taking place in our country has never happened before. They go after Biden's political opponent because he can't do it. He's weak. He's ineffective. He's totally out of it. He can't walk off a stage from a speech, and he can't put two sentences together. So how do you do it? Go after his opponent. This is Biden attacking democracy, a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time.
Now, of course, the critics of former President Trump and the left in our political establishment, the left within the media, they're going to come out and say, no, because he's crooked and he's a criminal and he's got to pay the price. No one is above the law. And I'm not suggesting that he should be above the law. I'm suggesting that they're fabricating these crimes against him because they realize they can't stop the political momentum that he's created. And that momentum is really just we the people standing up. I meet people all the time now, whether it's on this show with phone calls or even when I'm outside, that will pull me to the side and say, look, what they're doing to this guy is wrong, and I'm standing with him. People that don't even like Donald Trump, and he mentioned it right now in those comments that he made. It's an absolute travesty. But to give you an update on what's going on here with this election interference, as he's called it, and it's exactly that, right? This is someone running for president. They're putting gag orders on him on other cases so that he can't speak a word of defense for himself in the public square. They're saying, oh, you can't do that. You can't defend yourself. Hire a lawyer, do it in court, and that's it. A guy that was a former president, a guy that has the ability to garner the attention of the media, and nope, you can't do it. And his legal team today, they're in the jury selection process with the prosecutors in Manhattan. Now, this makes me think, of course, they're going to do the best that they can, but how good can you do when, you are this figure that has been vilified in the media? How much of a fair trial can Trump get in New York City? I don't know. I'm a New Yorker by birth and grew up seeing the icon that is Donald Trump everywhere in all sorts of things, whether it was the casinos in Atlantic City, boxing matches, you name it. He was involved in so many things. So maybe there's others like me that don't hate Trump, that grew up seeing him and say, hey, you know what? I know this guy. This guy's a hard worker. He's a hustler. And maybe he does have that appeal. But from what I can tell, and the way that things lean in New York, where everybody kind of leans to the left politically with the stronghold that Democrats have, it doesn't seem like he's going to get a fair shake in this trial. It just doesn't. I don't think any Republican can, honestly. But that remains to be seen. And we're going to get into that and get some analysis on that straight ahead. Also, we're going to talk in depth, honestly, from the military perspective, from the political and the media perspective, what is going on with both our administration doing absolutely nothing as Israel is attacked by Iran, and what we can expect in that conflict, what kind of outcome we can expect to see. So keep it locked right here, folks. If you want to join the conversation, here's the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, but I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thank you very much. We had some amazing things happen today. As you know, my son is graduating from high school, and it looks like the judge will not let me go to the graduation of my son, who's worked very, very hard. He's a great student. Very proud of the fact that he did so well, and I was looking forward for years to have graduation with his mother and father there. And it looks like the judge isn't going to allow me to escape this scam. It's a scam trial. If you read all of the legal pundits, all of the legal scholars today, there's not one that I see that said this is a case that should be brought or tried. It's a scam. It's a political witch hunt. It continues, and it continues forever. And we're not going to be given a fair trial. It's a very, very sad thing. In addition, as you know, next Thursday, we're before the United States Supreme Court on a very big hearing on immunity. And this is something that we've been waiting for a long time. And the judge, of course, is not going to allow us. He's a very conflicted judge. And he's not going to allow us to go to that. He won't allow me to leave here for a half a day, go to D.C. and go before the United States Supreme Court because he thinks he's superior, I guess, to the Supreme Court.
Of course, that is former President Donald Trump outside of the courthouse in New York City, sharing that he was not able to go to his son's graduation. The judge is not allowing him. So not only they're trying to beat him down and bleed his pockets with, like you saw in the other case, with $175 million bond, but you're also seeing how they just continue to come after Trump because they see that he's a political force to be reckoned with. And what's interesting, that I think is interesting, is that it seems like Biden, the Biden administration, the left within the media, the left in our country politically, they have no problem weaponizing whatever they've got, the media, the Department of Justice, state prosecutors, county prosecutors, whatever they can do to stop this man by hook or by crook, right? They don't care about beating him fair and square at the ballot box. They don't care about beating him fair and square in the court of public opinion, in the form of a debate, right? Trump has been out there saying, will Biden debate me? And crickets. I haven't heard a thing from the administration. But I want to get some perspective on this because a lot of things we want to talk about tonight. Particularly, this is election interference, right? It quite simply is. And I think we have to call it such. And somebody who's written a book on election interference, election integrity, is former Congressman Jody Hice. He's the founding member of the House Freedom Caucus, currently senior vice president of the Family Research Council, great organization, and president of FRC Action. And he's written a book called Sacred Trust, Election Integrity and the Will of the People. Congressman, welcome to the program, sir.
Rich, it's an honor to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you bet, Congressman. So I want to get into this a little bit because you heard the clip of audio of former President Trump. And my thinking is that this is more of the same of what we've seen, but I feel like the American people are kind of fed up with it, and they're going in a different direction. What are you seeing from your perch in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, it's the same thing. People are seeing this for what it is. It is, has every look in the world. It's just nothing other than a political witch hunt. They are going after this man for everything they can because, as you said, he is a political force. He goes after the swamp. He is not. He doesn't owe anyone anything. He's not bought out by any lobbying groups or any of that type of thing. And he's tough as nails, and he's a street fighter, and politically speaking, and he's extremely effective. So they're trying to take him out, and it's very shameful. This is a new point in American politics and American history, and at all costs, we need to protect the integrity of elections.
Yeah, I agree with that. And folks, again, we're on with Congressman Jody Hice. And Congressman, I want you to listen to this clip from White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, who's dodging the question of whether that President of the United States, Joe Biden, will even consider a debate in the public square against Donald Trump. Listen to this.
In 2020, do you think that the American electorate was helped by seeing Donald Trump and Joe Biden on the same stage at the same time?
Now I know where this is going.
At a presidential debate. Was that helpful, do you think, in terms of people making that decision?
That's a question for the American people. I can't speak to that from here. I can't.
Yeah.
And 2020 was a different time. It was a different time.
And looking ahead to this upcoming election cycle, do you think it would be helpful to see these two candidates who are in a rematch?
So slick. So slick.
At the same time, also competing against each other at a presidential
As the
debate.
president would say, you can't kid a kidder. What I will say is that is a question for the campaign. They will gladly, I'm sure, gladly take that question.
Now, there we have it. Karine Jean-Pierre punting on this question. She won't answer whether the president of the United States is willing to debate the former president of the United States. In my lifetime, I've never seen a matchup like this. And I think the American people are curious, and they deserve an answer from the commander-in-chief from the White House saying, are you going to talk about the issues of the day, the things that matter to most Americans when it comes to a healthy debate between these candidates? And yet it seems like the administration will not debate former President Trump. Really, they're just focused on using whatever they can politically through the swamp, through weaponization of whatever swamp agency they can get their hands on in order to beat him illegitimately. Congressman Jody Hice.
Well, and do they have any other choice? I mean, here's a president, quite frankly, who we all know is having tremendous troubles with his cognitive abilities, and so they're going to try to prevent him from being too much in the public, and particularly being with someone as sharp as President Trump. They're going to do everything they can to prevent that scenario from taking place. So it's not surprising they're trying to protect President Biden from continual gaffes and from the inability he has to think clearly. And so, sure, they're going to try every other option that they have.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, Congressman, you were in the swamp. You've left the swamp, and you're still, doing the people's work, the Lord's work, with trying to protect American families at FRC and through your work with FRC Action. Tell us a little bit about the move to FRC and why you think that work is important.
Well, my time with Tony Perkins goes back a little over 20 years ago when I was actually a pastor, and we got involved in a big battle with the ACLU. And Tony, actually, the very week that he became president of FRC, he was literally in his car driving from Baton Rouge to Washington, D.C., and I believe it was James Dobson who gave him a call in the car and said, you need to swing by this place in Georgia. They're having a rally and blah, blah, blah. So Tony came by. He was the first time we'd ever met, and who would ever imagine that years later I would be in Congress and would be taking a lot of help and working closely with FRC, and then after that time in Congress actually would be on the team. But look, there are so many problems we're facing in our country, Rich, but at the end of the day, I believe that it all points to spiritual issues. We cannot fix what's wrong in America just by throwing another $1 trillion at a problem or passing another piece of legislation. We need the good hand of God right now through these difficult times we're facing, and FRC understands that. It's a policy organization as well as a biblically focused organization, and I think the two are absolutely essential for this particular point in our nation's history, in particular.
Yeah, amen to that. Now, Congressman Jody Hice is the author of Sacred Trust, Election Integrity, and the Will of the People. And we're about to dig into the book because I think it's so important, and I love the title, Sacred Trust. This is something that clearly that's what elections are. People have this sacred trust about our secret ballot and our constitutional republic, and it's come into question because of 2020, and we've got to make sure that this thing works for us. So we're going to talk about your book, Sacred Trust, Election Integrity, and the Will of the People. Folks, I want to encourage you to get a copy of this for yourself and a copy to give away to a friend. We're coming right back with Jody Hice, former congressman in Georgia's 10th District and Senior VP at the Family Research Council. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation with former Congressman Jody Hice. He's currently Senior Vice President at Family Research Council and President of FRC Action. And he's written a book called Sacred Trust, Election Integrity, and the Will of the People. And I encourage you to get a copy for yourself and a copy for others. But if you're on the fence, listen to what this book is about. Because Sacred Trust, I think it's an excellent title because that is such an important notion to highlight when it comes to elections and election integrity. But it's something that I think many people are on the fence about. And it's a very taboo topic, right? You really can't always talk about it, Congressman. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, we have so many issues facing our country, Rich, but I don't know of anything that surpasses the importance of securing elections. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, elections are not about who wins or who loses an election. It is all about whether or not the will of the people was heard and accurately counted and portrayed. We are in a country that only works when we, the people, make our voices heard. We are a country based upon the consent of the governed, and that consent is granted at the ballot box, and it is there above everything that the will of the people matters. And for that reason, it is a sacred trust, both from the perspective of the voter, but also from the perspective of government, to defend and protect and to make sure that those elections are secure as they possibly can be. And without that, then our entire country is in tremendous jeopardy. I may be disappointed that my candidate loses a race, but if it was a fair election, I can come back next time and we can try to convince the public otherwise. But if the election was compromised, then we're in big trouble.
You know, Congressman, I think this is such an important topic. And it is to me just because I pay attention to this stuff. But I don't know that everybody feels that this is that important. What was the impetus for you to write this book at this time?
Well, I happened to be a senior member on the oversight committee when COVID first came. And it was literally the week after we had our very first case of COVID in the United States, a gentleman in Washington State. The very next week after he was diagnosed with COVID, the Democrats had a hearing in the Oversight Committee, and that started a whole series of hearings about how we need to federalize elections. People are going to be fearful of going to the election precinct or whatever. We need to start sending live ballots to these people. We need to one thing after another. And we started a huge discourse that was extremely well organized about a federal takeover of elections, in essence. And then adding to that, they started talking about horrible, like a rash across the nation, voter suppression, and they used Georgia as Exhibit A. Well, I was from Georgia, and I knew that what they were saying was not true. And so I started pushing back on that, and one thing led to another, and we just got more and more and more into this whole issue. And it's amazing how many states actually changed their election laws during the push for this, but as a result of COVID. And so it was really out of that, Rich, that I got pushed into this. I ended up being the one to challenge the electoral votes from Georgia, and I kind of became the tip of the spear, at least from Georgia, on this issue.
So the media would call you an election denier.
Oh, absolutely. That's what they call me. You know, but listen, Democrats have been challenging elections every time there is one. But you let a Republican challenge one when there are legitimate concerns, and all of a sudden we are called election deniers and threats to democracy and everything else, when in reality all we want is secure, honest elections and for the will of the people to be honored through the election box. And when we have questions as to whether or not that takes place, all of a sudden we are a threat to democracy, when the real threat to democracy is insecure elections and allowing all sorts of behavior and activity to take place that could indeed compromise the will of the people at the ballot box.
You know, I think election integrity is very important. You're highlighting many reasons why it's important. Tell us about why or when you see this integrity failing and when it's compromised, and how do we approach that?
Well, there are so many things. Again, COVID introduced a lot of things that otherwise never would have been allowed. Everything from mail. We had many states mail live ballots to everyone on their voter files. I actually saw an article, I believe it was last week, that in essence said the average state, the voter registration files are somewhere between 8 and 18% inaccurate. So, I mean, if we just round it off, if we have 10 to 20% inaccurate files, then we're starting this whole thing behind the 8 ball. But then when you start sending live ballots to these people, that's an ingredient for some inaccurate outcomes. But then you had, everything from lack of photo identification to lack of signature verifications to mail-in ballots, drop-off boxes, ballot harvesting. I mean, we go on and on and on with a host of activities that were introduced as a result of COVID. And now in many states, they've become the law of the state for accepted methods for ballot for voting. And I believe it's just it's a dangerous outcome. Again, the end result has to be an accurate portrayal of the will of the people at that election. This is not to be politicized. Elections are not to be politicized. They are to be secure and an accurate demonstration of the will of the people, period. And whatever they decide, that's the political outcome. But the election process itself should be void of political interference, and it's simply everything to be done to secure it so that the will of the people is accurately demonstrated.
Outstanding response. Former Congressman Jody Hice is with us. He is the author of the brand new book, and you got to get a copy of this, Sacred Trust, Election Integrity, and the Will of the People. And Congressman, stick with us. We're going to come back. I want to learn a little bit more about the outcomes that you recommend for the book, the solutions that you're recommending, and also your general outlook for America through your work at FRC. So stick with us, folks. We're coming right back with former Congressman Jody Hice from Georgia's 10th District. He was the founding member of the House Freedom Caucus and senior vice president of Family Research Council and president at FRC Action. If you want to join the late night national town hall conversation that we're having, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue with former Congressman Jody Hice. He's written the book, Sacred Trust, Election Integrity, and the Will of the People. And, Congressman, in the time that we have, I really want to get a sense from you because you have a very unique perspective, right? You've written the book because of your unique work in Congress, being on the committee that allowed you to see what was going on with COVID firsthand, and then the experience of going through the 2020 election, and your time as a pastor and someone who understands what's going on and has been in a position to influence some of what's going on. And here you are in a new position as senior VP at FRC and president at FRC Action. And this is very important work as long as I've been around. Earlier you mentioned James Dobson, who's somebody that, listening to his radio program was an influence, a very early influence of mine to get into radio and to just be part of the conservative movement. And, I see that there's a lot out there. And the work of Tony Perkins, FRC, this is important work. And I think it's important for the listeners to get a sense of, not only the work that you're doing, but your outlook on how you see America now, and are we on the right track? Where are we headed?
Well, it depends on what issue we're dealing with. Look, overall, I believe America's in trouble right now. We have an administration that's pushing every wrong button, it seems, imaginable. I mean, our economy is in shambles. Our borders are wide open. Crime is through the roof. Inflation is through the roof. Our global respect is going down. Our military is weaker. So you look at all the political things out there and you say, good grief, this is horrible what's happening. And it indeed is. But that in itself is reason for hope, because while things are, in fact, becoming more and more of a challenge, even to a danger, to where we're hoping to pass liberty and freedom to our children, our grandchildren, people are beginning to stand up, Rich. People are beginning to wake up. They're getting involved like never before. Every single election cycle that I was in Congress, which was 4 terms, every term, there were more quality people coming and being elected than there were the previous term. And so we're seeing through local districts, people are getting involved. We're seeing parents stand up at school board meetings. So a lot of this is happening. And then on the election side, many states, dozens of states, have passed legislation to strengthen the integrity of their voting processes in their individual states. And I think that gives confidence to voters that their votes are going to count, that we're going to have one legal ballot cast, one legal ballot counted, so to speak, in these different states and precincts and so forth. And so, at a point where we are at a major crossroads in our country, we are also at a point where people are waking up and getting engaged, and this still is a nation of the people, by the people, that is dictated by the will of the people. And so this is our moment to shine, and I believe people are waking up to that reality.
Amen to that. Now, let everybody know how they get a copy of the book. Where do they go?
Well, they can go to their favorite bookstore. It should be anywhere that you buy books. I certainly can get it at Amazon. It has been the #1 new release at Amazon. It's only been out 2 weeks or less, and so it's going there. Of course, we have the audio books, Kindle, pretty much every format that you want. I would encourage folks to jump on Amazon and get an order right away. I believe this is an issue that ranks among the top concerns of the American people right now. And again, we've got a lot of issues, the border and all these things, but election integrity consistently ranks among the most concerns, the highest concerns that the American people have, and with good reason. Because if that is ever lost, how do we regain our country if the voice of the people at the ballot box is lost?
Outstanding. Folks, get a couple of copies of the book from former Congressman Jody Hice. The book is Sacred Trust, Election Integrity, and the Will of the People. Now, Congressman, for all of the Americans that are tuned in tonight listening and those that are going to listen tomorrow on the podcast, let them know how they can follow you and keep up to speed with the important work that you're doing.
Well, listen, Family Research Council is an incredible organization, and they can keep up with that. I also host. We have a daily television and radio program, Washington Watch. In fact, I aired that today. I generally am on Washington Watch every Friday, but also fill in whenever Tony is not able to be there, and today was one of those. But people can go to frc.org or frcaction.org and stay on top of what we're doing, what I'm doing personally, and certainly encourage people to do so.
Well, there you have it, amigos. Check out the book, Sacred Trust, Election Integrity, and the Will of the People. Give the congressman a follow on whichever social media platform you follow him on, and check him out at frc.org. Jody Hice, sir, I want to thank you for being a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and for being with us tonight. God bless you, Congressman.
God bless you, Rich. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. All right, folks, we're coming right back. There is more to come straight ahead with your calls and a whole lot more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And we continue our conversation. Now, we talked about election integrity. We talked about the importance of the sacred trust and the will of the people. And the will of the people is really what comes into question when we're dealing with election interference. When you have judges that won't allow the rule of law to rule over what's going on. When you have prosecutors that are just rogue, like the ones that are going after former President Trump. And it's a shame, but it's also an exercise in activism, right? Because if we allow things to happen, they're going to happen. If we are up in arms about things and, taking to the op-ed pages or to wherever it is that we can launch our own individual forms of protest, whether it be social media, talking to our friends at the grocery store, et cetera, getting involved in a campaign or something like that, everybody's got to do what they've got to do. We're not at a point where we can say, well, when I was younger, I would have done that, or, maybe I'll do that when I'm older. No, I think everyone's got something that they can offer, and everybody should offer something. And you look at Trump, and he's out there, he's doing everything he can, and some people will say, no, he's doing this because he is an egomaniac, and he wants to be president again. But me in his shoes, I would choose to say, look, I was the 45th president. I will always be the 45th president. I'll always have this Secret Service detail. I have security clearance. That's it. I was a president. Why on earth would you subject yourself to this, all of these lawsuits, all of these criminal cases, right? But that's where he is. And he's on the trail, and he's grinding, and he's hitting it hard. And one of the things from this weekend, he was at a rally in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And he said something I thought was really, really cool. He offered his thoughts for the people of Israel. But then he gave some thoughts on Joe Biden as well. Let's start off with Cut 21. Listen to this.
Before going any further, I want to say God bless the people of Israel. They're under attack right now. That's because we show great weakness. This would not happen. The weakness that we've shown is unbelievable, and it would not have happened if we were in office. You know that. They know that. Everybody knows that. But America prays for Israel. We send our absolute support to everyone in harm's way. This is an attack that would not have happened. I mean, to think about what we have to go through and the things we put up with the border, with no energy independence, with all electric cars. Would everybody like to buy an electric car for the rest of you? But we will return the world to peace through strength, and it'll happen very quickly. I will revive American strength abroad, and we will restore American strength at home. We were respected 4 years ago all over the world. Today, we are considered a joke. It's not going to be for long. Believe me, it's not going to be for long.
So that's former President Trump again, and he added and underscored his thoughts about what happens when Biden gets involved in things. Listen to this.
Think of it. We've been in this mess together for 3.5 years. Only a little more than 6 months until that most important day in the history of our country, November 5th. Think of that. But what has he done that's good? Nothing. Has anything that he's done turned out? Everything he touches turns to
You got to love that. That is former President Trump again over the weekend on the campaign trail. And ultimately, he's a class act, in my opinion. Trump offering his thoughts and prayers for the people of Israel, I think, is key when we have Biden kind of turning his back on things. So we're going to find out the reaction from the Jewish News Service and from those in the military to what is going on with this attack on Israel by Iran. Folks, stick around. The conversation continues right here. It's America at Night with me, Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of the program. It's the Monday night edition. If you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And plenty to discuss today. Of course, a lot of big headlines. The Trump trial is underway in New York City. The judge has been somewhat unfair, in my opinion, to Donald Trump, saying that he can't go to his kid's graduation. He's not allowing the president to attend his case that's up for consideration with the Supreme Court, and so many other things. And we talked a little bit about that in the last hour, and we'll get back into that in the next hour as well. But this hour, I want to focus on the disaster of events that occurred over the weekend with this attack on Israel. Now, last week or the week before, about a week ago, there was a big pro-Hamas or pro-Palestinian rally in Dearborn, Michigan. I played the audio for you then, but I'm going to play it again for you now so you can remember what they were talking about and what they were chanting.
Malcolm X said, and I quote, "We live in one of the rottenest countries that has ever existed on this earth. It's not Genocide Joe that has to go. It's the entire system that has to go. Any system that would allow such atrocities and such devilry to happen and would support it, such a system does not deserve to exist on God's earth." And so when these fools ask us if Israel has the right to exist, the chant "Death to Israel" has become the most logical chant shouted across the world today.
And that, of course, is the "Death to Israel, Death to America" chant at a rally in Dearborn, Michigan. I think Governor Gretchen Whitmer finally decided to say something about that today. It's been over a week. And the attack on Israel over the weekend, hundreds of missiles being sent in by Iran, them claiming it's retaliation for something else. And this is a very, very, I'm going to use the word dire situation, where we have an administration that's really on the sidelines to what's been, at least in my lifetime, our greatest partner, following the fall of the Shah in the Middle East. And here we have it. The administration is somewhat, I'm going to say, tacitly in approval of what's going on, because the condemnation hasn't seemed so I don't know, strict, fierce. It just doesn't seem convincing to me. So I bring this up because there is a sentiment out there that is really brewing, and we're seeing it everywhere. At least I am. I was going to a pizza place earlier today, driving in my car. I was with my girlfriend. We're going to get a little specialty slice of pizza. Not a slice, an actual small pie. And I'm driving, and I see a car very erratically driving, switching from one lane, going to the next. It's a red light, and cars are slowing down to the red light. And this guy's cutting off the one guy, cutting off the next guy. He's got nowhere to go because there's nothing but cars and a red light. People are honking, and it makes no sense for him to be weaving into traffic like this because he can't get anywhere. And it's my turn to get into the lane, and as I'm driving, he flies in front of me, cuts me off. And I go to the left lane to get away from this guy, and I had to make a left anyway. And I see a Palestinian flag hanging from the mirror, and a typical, I guess, headdress, scarf type of thing, like the one Arafat wore. Forgive me, I'm forgetting the name of it, that pattern on the dashboard. And, I'm looking, I'm like, well, why are you cutting people off? And, He doesn't even look at me. He just extends his hand out the window and gives me the middle finger. And again, I'm just thinking, why is this guy so aggressive? And he's going to find somebody who's equally as aggressive, if not more, in this part of the country. That's not going to be tolerated for too long. And it just made me think, why is this particular group just in this situation terrorizing? Whether it's the group that's terrorizing people in Israel, this guy is terrorizing the motorists on the road. And I understand they're mad and they believe there was a genocide and there's propaganda, and I get all that. But I also realize that this is the New York metro area, and people just don't stand for stuff. They're not going to tolerate this type of thing. Yet we have an administration that's seemingly tolerating this and standing on the sidelines. So I want to get the perspective of the editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Service, Jonathan Tobin. He's been on in the past, a great perspective. And this has, unfolded over the weekend. So help me welcome Jonathan Tobin. Welcome back, sir.
Well, thank you for having me on. Thanks.
You bet. So what's your initial reaction to just the events we've seen? A week ago, we've got a rally in Dearborn, Michigan, where they're chanting death to Israel, death to America. That's stuff I've only really seen in Iran when they opened their sessions of parliament. And now we're seeing it on American soil. And a week later, we have this attack that was almost promised, through the intelligence agencies. And here we are on Monday with all of this fallout.
Well, you're right. This is crazy stuff. And what makes it worse, it's bad enough that Dearborn, Michigan has become what the Wall Street Journal referred to as the jihad capital of America. It is the largest, it has a large Arab American Muslim population, but seemingly the people speaking for that community are terrible extremists. And the mayor of that town, a Democrat, is basically pro-Hamas. And one of the most bizarre episodes, and what has been, as we look at it from, trying to look at it from 30,000 feet, a bizarre election cycle, was what happened earlier this year when the Biden reelection campaign sought to have a meeting with this pro-Hamas mayor. And he wouldn't even talk to them. He said, I'm not talking to, just campaign officials. I want to talk to policymakers. So they sent the deputy national security director and Samantha Power, the head of USAID, and to Dearborn, Michigan, to bend the knee to this guy, to apologize to him for what, he considered to be insufficient hostility to Israel on the part of the current administration, on the part of Joe Biden.
Wow.
And everything that he has been doing, I wrote about this in the Federalist. It was, didn't get major headlines, but that was such a crazy incident. And you see, everything that Biden has been doing, or most everything that Biden has been doing since January, has been because he is motivated by fear that voters in Dearborn and left-wing activists elsewhere aren't going to vote for him in November, and that there isn't sufficient, enthusiasm for him among the intersectional, left-wing, ideological so-called progressives, not just the squad, which is openly anti-Semitic and openly anti-Israel, but progressives have been sort of suborned by this anti-Israel propaganda, the lies about genocide. So he's basically abandoned his initial position on the war that Israel is fighting to eradicate Hamas, when he said initially after October 7th, after the massacres, that Hamas needs to be eradicated. Now he's threatened to cut aid to Israel and to use pressure in the United Nations as well if Israel goes ahead and finishes the job of eliminating Hamas. And all of this is related, just to show how there are a lot of storylines here, and it can be confusing. The attacks by Iran against Israel this past weekend are the product of 3 years of Biden appeasement of Iran, just as October 7th was a product of that appeasement, because Iran is using its allies and its terrorist clients like Hamas and its terrorist auxiliaries like Hezbollah in Lebanon to fight a war against Israel that didn't begin on October 7th, it just heated up. And so, he's sort of unleashed a tiger. And Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, but Biden is still convinced that his whole foreign policy team of Obama administration alumni are convinced the key to their problems is making nice with Iran. That's why he continues to release frozen funds. He just recently gave them $10 billion. How do they spend that money? Aiding terrorism, working to kill not just Israelis, but Americans. So now he's placed in the position where he's kind of on both sides of this argument. He's helping Iran and trying not to offend Iran, but then when they unleash a terrorist assault, sending all these missiles flying towards Israeli targets, even at Jerusalem, at the Muslim holy places as well as the Jewish holy places, he's forced to step in and say, no, don't do that. I'm going to help Israel fend them off. But he's also going to tell Israel, as he did right in the aftermath of that unsuccessful attack, don't hit back. Show restraint. Let Hamas survive. Let Iran go unpunished for doing something. How would Americans react if another country were firing missiles at us? We'd go to war, right? But he doesn't want Israel to fight back. So this is such a confused foreign policy, and it boils down to two things. He and his foreign policy team are still obsessed with not annoying and trying to make nice with Iran, and he's afraid of anti-Semitic voters in Michigan and elsewhere throughout the country because he thinks they're the key to why he's going to lose to Donald Trump in November, even though, of course, if he is going to lose Michigan and other swing states to Donald Trump, it's going to be because of open borders, inflation, and not because he is insufficiently hostile to Israel.
Folks, we're on with Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief at the Jewish News Service. And Jonathan, let me ask you, this notion of voters in Michigan, and I don't doubt it for a second, but earlier you said it's not because of the squad, but tell me, what is your understanding, belief, or thought on the extent of pressure coming from Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib of Michigan?
Well, she has certainly, she and the rest of the members of the squad, whose numbers have expanded since they first made their debut in Congress in January 2019, they have a lot of pull with the Democratic caucus and with progressives who, the so-called progressive caucus is half of all the Democrats in Congress. So they have influence, and Biden is afraid of them. He's clearly afraid of them. And while he's not going to go all the way towards them, he does not condemn them. He doesn't, just as he didn't condemn that Hamas rally, that anti-Semitic rally, that anti-American rally in Dearborn. He's not attacking people like Tlaib, and that says something. If you recall the mythology that Biden likes to use about why he ran for president in 2020, he said it was because he was outraged about the neo-Nazi rally in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017. So that's why I'm running for president. How is he planning on retaining the presidency that he won in 2020? By appeasing anti-Semitic voters and not condemning anti-Semitic rallies that are no different from the lunatics who were waving tiki torches, and the far less numerous lunatics who were waving tiki torches in Charlottesville a few years ago.
Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief of Jewish News Service, or Syndicate, excuse me. We're coming right back. Stick around, folks. We're coming right back with Jonathan, and we're going to continue this discussion. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? But right. You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I never said we didn't have information that we could act on and speak to our Israeli counterparts about. What I said was Iran never delivered a message giving us the time and the targets. No. No timing. I mean, I want to be clear. This whole narrative out there that Iran passed us a message with what they were going to do is ridiculous.
Okay, well, and maybe he doesn't read the Drudge Report or every other news source that I've seen over the last 72 hours saying, attack imminent, Iran's going to attack Israel. But that's what I saw in the days leading up to this. What do you think of what John Kirby just said, Jonathan Tobin?
That's a tough job to have, isn't it? Having to, basically lie for Joe Biden. John Kirby has done as good, as opposed to that clown show, in the White House. John Kirby has done as decent a job as you could expect in the State Department. He is an ex-admiral, and there's some honor left there. But the issue here is that Biden keeps trying to have it both ways. He wants to try to appease Iran, but he doesn't want to be seen as doing it, openly. He understands that everything involved in his appeasement of Iran is deeply unpopular in this country, but he still sticks to it. I mean, it's kind of nuts. And the substance right now isn't so much about whether the White House warned Israel. Israel probably has better intelligence about Iran than anybody in Washington does. Let's be honest here. The problem is that Biden is doing everything to stop Israel from doing what it needs to do to not merely punish Iran for what it tried to do, but to send them a message: don't try this again. Iran thinks, all right, fine, we're quits. We shot missiles at you. They got shot down. That's enough. Would any American be satisfied with that? Like, if people were shooting missiles at us, not just, at American forces somewhere in the ocean, but at our cities, at Washington, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, would we tolerate that? Of course not. Why should we expect Israel to tolerate it? Just as why should we expect, as Joe Biden seems to, that Israel should tolerate the continued existence on its border of a genocidal terrorist organization who has only two purposes: number one, destroy Israel; number two, the genocide of every Jew in the world that it can get its hands on. That they should leave them in place in Gaza. Don't finish them off. Leave them there because, and why does he do it? For politics. Both his go soft on Iran and go soft on Hamas policies towards Israel are rooted in his fear of left-wing Democrats, the intersectional left wing of his own party, indoctrinated in these woke myths about critical race theory that makes them think that Israel is a white oppressor state. It's a big lie. He's a fool to go along with it, and he's a fool to hinge his reelection campaign on such lies.
Jonathan Tobin, I want to thank you for being with us. The music means they're kicking both of us out of here. Folks, check him out online, Jewish News Syndicate. Sir, I appreciate you being here. Godspeed.
Thanks so much.
You bet. Folks, we're coming right back for military analysis on this attack from Iran on Israel. Don't go anywhere.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The United States is committed to Israel's security.
والولايات المتحدة ملتزمة بأمن إسرائيل.
We're committed to a ceasefire that will bring the hostages home and preventing conflict from spreading beyond what it already has.
Of course, that's President Joe Biden, also known as Sleepy Joe. Sleepy Joe. I like to call him Joe El Baboso Biden, who we now call Joe El Viejito Biden. And he says, we're committed. You heard what he had to say. It's useless. Then you've got Admiral Kirby saying, we had no idea that this was going to happen. Now, we knew it might happen, but they never said we're going to do this. We had no idea that Iran was going to do this. And then he goes on to explain whether or not Biden actually told Iran, don't do it, and they did it anyway. Listen to this.
John, has President Biden considered maybe beefing up the public Iran posture to be more than just one word?
You're referring to don't.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about...
And they did it anyway.
And let's talk about what we did, Peter. Let's talk about don't and did. Let's talk about Saturday night. He made it clear that he didn't want to see escalation in the region.
And what?
Let me finish. He added military resources to the region right after October 7th. And then when we had an inkling that this kind of thing was coming, he added even more military resources to the region. More destroyers that were capable of shooting down ballistic missiles, a fighter squadron that was able to shoot down drones. And that's what we did. So you can talk about the don't word all you want, but let's talk about what did happen. And what did happen was Iran utterly failed. And if I'm sitting in Tehran right now, I'm betting that President Biden takes it pretty seriously when he says don't escalate. He's going to act to make sure that you can. And they didn't. Yes, they fired an unprecedented amount of munitions, but how much of a success did they have, Peter? None. Zero. Very little infrastructure. It was an embarrassing failure for the Supreme Leader and for the IRGC.
That is Kirby, former Admiral Kirby, giving his song and dance on Biden's massive foreign policy and don't you dare, don't, right? And I think it's laughable, but it's not laughable, right? We're seeing chants of death to America inside the United States, chants of death to Israel. We have the administration not doing as much as they possibly can, and Iran now sending these drones, thankfully not as successful as they probably hoped, but not good in the least. I want to get some analysis on all of this from former United States Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt. He's retired. He was the former deputy representative to NATO, and you see him on Newsmax. You've heard him here before. He's the co-founder of Restore Liberty, and he's our guest this evening. General, welcome back, sir.
I just love your show. It's so great to be back with you, even if we are on the eve of some really tough stuff. How are you, Rich?
Oh, thank you, brother. I'm with you, and I appreciate your kind words. This is interesting to me that, there's this downplay. Again, I'm not a general. You are. But as a guy that observes the media and comments on it, I can tell you, I can't remember the last time that I saw something this volatile going on in the Middle East. I'm 45 years old, so I don't have the purview that others older than me might have, but I can tell you, this stuff doesn't look good in the least. What say you?
So let me say something that's going to sound extremely hyperbolic, and then through the course of time, we'll argue why it's not. We've never been in a more dangerous situation, I think, in the planet's history than we are in right now, period.
So it's not just me.
No, it's not just you. We are in absolutely biblical times. And what I see coming together right now, and the United States shirking its leadership role, the combination of the two, and the fact that we've got threats right here on our own soil, the puzzle pieces are all just starting to click. And I don't want to be a fearmonger, but I will tell you that I'm very, very uncomfortable with how this is all proceeding. And we have to support Israel, and yet we find an administration that wants to thread the needle called Michigan for 16 electoral votes, which they think are much more important than ICBMs flying all over the planet.
This is an interesting take, and I just had the editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Syndicate on, and he was alluding to similar, saying that this is political pressure, fear from the Biden administration to not stand up. But my thinking is, this is pretty severe for somebody that is just afraid of Rashida Tlaib and the left within the media, the left within the political establishment to get those, like you said, 16 electoral votes. The repercussions of this seem dire, from my opinion. The Middle East is on fire, and it seems to be getting worse. Do you think it's really all politics, or is there more?
Well, there is more. It is all politics, and good luck at that Chicago Democratic convention coming up, because that does not look like a lot of fun, even if you're a Democrat. But let's look at the other part of this. Comer and the Oversight Committee, Representative Comer, they're trying like heck to get through finding out where the Biden administration has been compromised. Well, listen, we on the Iran side, we can see with our own eyes, going back to the Obama administration, trying to pay off the mullahs to not develop nuclear weapons, which they did just anyway. And we have funded under the Biden regime by looking the other way on oil, by paying billions of dollars for 5 hostages. We have more than funded Iran's behavior. When you compare it to what we give Israel every year, it's exponential. And so they have been paying Iran to get us in the world to this place. My concern, Rich, is the confidence that the Ayatollah and the mullahs have right now and why they feel emboldened to do this. And to find that answer, you better go to Beijing. You better go to Moscow.
Well, General, I have to say that you've got the spokesman for the National Security Council, John Kirby, again, in a back and forth with Peter Doocy from Fox News, saying he has no idea about this unfreezing of billions of dollars that the administration has put forward. I want you to hear this. Listen to this.
Now that we know that the Iranians do not listen to President Biden's public warnings, is there any regret here about unfreezing billions of dollars for Iranian leaders during the president's administration?
What unfreezing are you talking about?
He unfroze billions of dollars.
For Iranian leaders?
Yeah.
Really? I don't think so.
Okay,
so first of all,
it's for humanitarian purposes, but doesn't that...
But you don't believe me.
Well, doesn't that free up money for them to spend on other stuff? Where do you get the money for an unprecedented number of munitions to fire at Israel?
So first of all, I'm betting if they're sitting in Tehran, they're taking it seriously when President Biden says he's going to defend Israel. We put skin in the game, a whole heck of a lot of it, and knocked almost everything out of the sky. So I'm betting they're taking it pretty seriously. And as for this unfreezing, none of that fund, none of those funds set up in an account, by the way, by the previous administration, goes directly to the supreme leader. The IRGC can only be used for humanitarian purposes, and we're watching that account very, very closely to make sure that that's what happens.
Now, General, forgive my lack of eloquence here, but this sounds like complete and total BS.
Oh, yeah, no, it's this man has impaled his integrity. He is impaled, but think about what a tough job he has. If he's not going to resign, then that means he has to carry the water for this administration and everything that they've done. And let's forget about unfreezing 10 billion here, 6 billion there. What about the 60 billion annually in oil sales to the Chinese that this administration looked the other way on and said we're not going to enforce the sanctions? Well, what do you think $100 billion does if you are hell-bent on taking out Israel? And again, I'll just be a broken record. If you think that foreign wars stay foreign, oh my gosh, America, wake up. This stuff is here. That wide open border has invited every single terrorist group from Hezbollah to the IRGC, the Islamic Jihad, and the People's Liberation Army. They're all here. So that war then becomes domestic once this thing really gets ramped up.
Folks, we're on with General Blaine Holt getting some analysis on this. And General, when we come back, I want to get your take on what actually happened. Your thought on there's a lot of talk in the media downplaying this, saying, no, they just sent a couple of hundred missiles and they didn't make contact, and as if this was, a common occurrence. And I know Israel getting bombed is a somewhat common occurrence, but not something necessarily coming directly from Tehran as this was. And I want you to kind of walk us through that from your military perspective. Folks, we're coming right back with retired General Blaine Holt. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
There's more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on the news network.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation with retired Air Force General Blaine Holt. And as always, we get a number of calls from across the country, from Pennsylvania, Idaho, California, New York, you name it. Lots of interested listeners that want to join the late night national town hall conversation. And I want to go to Sue in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. She was at the Trump rally where Trump gave his thoughts in kind of real-time reaction to the attack on Israel from Iran. Sue, you're on with General Blaine Holt and me. Go right ahead.
Good evening, and to General Holt, thank you for being here. So when I got word that this was happening, that these drones were coming in from Iran, I honestly thought that at the same time we were going to be experiencing some kind of event here, because, you know, we've had illegals coming into the country for 3 years now, and I'm 100% sure we have sleeper cells all over the place. And we were experiencing some outage with our phones and things from the rally. So I just really was thinking that maybe that something concurrently would be happening here. And I think the chances of that are pretty great. And I just wanted to hear what the general has to say about that. And are we prepared for something like that? We don't have an Iron Dome or anything on the ground here to anticipate these things, do we?
Thank you, Sue. I appreciate it.
Sue, you ought to be Rich Valdez's Caller of the Year. You have nailed it. This is so your phasing is off by just a little bit. What you saw was an event overseas, and you're going to start to now see escalation by multiple parties. And when Iran starts to feel the squeeze, that's when you're going to see all of these cells here start to come to life, and we'll start seeing things. You saw a little snippet of that this morning or this afternoon when these protests on highways happened across the nation with the Palestinians. That looks like an operational test to me, and we should take that very seriously. But, you are so right to take your security here domestically seriously, because we're not hearing anything from our leadership about what they intend to do when these folks and these terrorist cells that we know are here are going to be activated as a result of the wars that are happening overseas. Sue, gold star, and please go tell as many Americans as you can.
You know, thank you, Sue. I appreciate you, like always. In general, thank you. You know, what's interesting, I opened up this hour telling folks about a little story about me going to get pizza. And I was going to get pizza, and I had seen this story earlier today, but I didn't put two and two together because I was in Jersey, and I didn't get run off the road, but, you know, this guy cut me off pretty aggressively, and had I not, you know, swerved out of the way, this guy would have clipped the front of my truck. And when I pull up to, like, you know, see who he is and, you know, maybe yell at him or something through the window, he's flipping me the bird. He's got one of these Arab headdress type of things, those scarves on his dashboard, and a Palestinian flag in the window, and he's flipping me the bird. There was four guys, very young guys, 18, 19 years old, in the car, but he was driving super erratically. You know, there was a red light, and he was going fast, and I was just thinking, what is this guy's rush? Where does he think he's going? And I didn't put two and two together, thinking about this disruption that we had earlier, and how, you're right, we have these cells that are not necessarily terrorists, but they are, in my opinion, necessarily terrorizing in the name of their own protest, people on the road and others. And do you think that we see these, what are seemingly acts of quote-unquote peaceful protest, erupt into something more?
I absolutely do. That's how it goes out. You've got three different types of groups that have come across that border predominantly. You've got folks that are of a criminal element. Maybe they're from gangs. Maybe they were prisoners. Maybe they were in asylums. Or maybe they're folks that are embedded in them that were seeking a better life. They're here. They're free agents, if you will. They're not organized in any way, shape, or form. The UN is paying with our money to them approximately $2,200 per person per month. Okay, switch gears. Second group. Second group is terrorist organized groups that have come in across that border. They reorganize here. They start to develop plans, and they start to develop target sets, and they're waiting for orders. Third group. third group is state actors. This would be your Russian FSB intelligence groups, your IRGC Iranian groups, or People's Liberation Army from China. They come in small pockets. They also have orders. They also have targets, and they organize around the nation. There are many, many thousands of them, if not more, and they await orders as well. So this is what the latch spring looks like. This is what the security environment here looks like. Here's the bad news. There is more of them than there are United States military and first responders across the entire nation. So if all hell does break loose, and again, we're not hearing from our leadership about what their plan for this is because they let them all in. If all hell does break loose, then is this to fall to we the people here at home because we're not hearing how our Guard, our reserves, our active, our first responders are going to deal with this if there is not to be what President Trump is calling for, which is mass deportations, which in my view could not happen soon enough because we are in grave danger as I speak these words right now.
And in my view, I think mass deportations are a lot harder than we think they're going to be. I just don't see how, hey, come here, we're sending you home. Oh, okay, no problem. I mean, have you seen how aggressive these people are? They're very, very aggressive. They beat up the cops. So I'm just thinking, you know, when you see these, when the cops go to the shelter, I've seen video after video after video. It's not going to be a pretty sight. We're going to need a lot more firepower. And when you're saying we're outnumbered, we're screwed. General, don't go anywhere. I want to wrap up with you on the other side of this. Folks, we're on with retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt, United States Air Force retired. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, we continue with the General Blaine Holt. And General, you said some interesting things. A couple of years ago, I was having, some family talk, probably at Thanksgiving with some of my brothers. And they were like, listen, Richie, I'm telling you, we're going to get invaded here. We're going to get invaded. Maybe it's going to be China coming in through California or right through New York Harbor. And I was laughing at them. I said, listen, this country is not going to get invaded. We have the most brave men and women in the military, of any military on the planet. It's never going to happen. And here we are. And my brother sent me a reminder the other day in our family group text to tell me, hey, by the way, those who thought we couldn't be invaded, there's 10 million people here, and it's already happened. And I was like, holy crap. And it reminded me of a conversation where you and I had a while back. And again, today's conversation opens up the same conversation to that, which is it's already happening. They're on standby. They're waiting. It's not a question of when. It's a question of if, or not a question of if. It's a question of when they actually do this. And you made the call for people to come through Restore Liberty and all that. So I want you to give all of the information to people so they can follow you and figure out exactly what they need to do.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to meet your brother one day, but come visit us at restore-liberty.org. You're not going to find a political organization. You're going to find a constitutional organization that wants our liberties restored. You can come find me at newsmax.com. I'm on the insiders page at The Irascible Disruptor. I write once a week. And I just can't tell you how much I cherish and enjoy our conversations, Rich. So thank you very much.
Same here, brother. I appreciate it, General. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you. Folks, we're coming right back. Open Phone America, 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ is the number. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the third hour of the program. It's our Monday night edition. If you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. This third and final hour of the program is a time-honored tradition here, and started by the late, great Larry King, continued by the late, great Jim Bohannon. And we all will commemorate Open Phone America tonight as well. So I want to go into a few things. Obviously, we spoke about the Trump trial, and we'll take calls and thoughts, opinions on all of that with respect to, your thoughts on that. And we also had some discussion around what's going on with Israel, right? Israel being attacked over the weekend by Iran, the Biden administration kind of just really skirting their responsibility and just not doing what they need to do, in my opinion. So we can weigh in on that as well. But I want to get to some domestic stuff, and there is some developments in the shooting of a woman on a movie set that involved, everybody involved in the making of this movie, Rust. And we have a report on that, and then we got some audio from the actual court proceedings. Listen to this.
Part of the sentencing may have been the jail conversation recordings that were released. And also, the judge noted that she never once heard Hannah Gutierrez Reed say she was sorry. She said instead it was your attorney who said that you were remorseful. Here's some of the things that Hannah Gutierrez Reed, when she spoke for the first time in court, begging the judge to not give her more time. She said her heart aches for the Hutchins family and that she called Helena Hutchins an inspiration to her. She says, I'm beyond grateful that director Joel Souza survived that terrible day. But she also said, quote, I am saddened by the way the media portrayed me as a complete monster. And never once did she say, I am sorry for my actions, not checking those dummy rounds that ended up having a live round mixed in that ultimately resulted in the death of this victim.
So that is a report from NBC News. And I want to, she referenced some of the quotes from Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the armorer on this film Rust, who was sentenced today to 18 years in prison for her role in this. And again, the armorer's job on the film, as we all know from having talked about this in the past, is clearly to make sure that the guns that are being used are safe, right? And they're fake. Ideally, I think they should be fake. And we should not have live rounds in these guns that are being used on movie sets. Nobody should be dying at a movie. And that's the armorer's job, from what I understand of this. And the courtroom proceedings today were interesting. The back and forth between Ms. Gutierrez and the judge. We have it, and I want you to hear it. Listen to this.
I am sentencing you to 18 months of incarceration at a New Mexico women's correctional facility. I find that what you did constitutes a serious violent offense. It was committed in a physically violent manner, a fatal gunshot done with your recklessness in the face of knowledge that your acts were reasonably likely to result in serious harm.
Now, that was the judge. I want you to hear Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the armorer and the gun supervisor on the set of the movie Rust, pleading with the judge moments earlier to not give her more prison time. Listen to this.
First and foremost, my heart aches for the Hutchins family and friends and colleagues as well. And it has since the day this tragedy occurred. Helena has been and always will be an inspiration to me. I understand she was taken too soon, and I pray that you all find peace. I am beyond grateful that Joel survived that terrible day. My heart goes out to the film industry for the devastating pain that this tragedy caused and the old wounds that have been reopened. I am saddened by the way the media sensationalized our traumatic tragedy and portrayed me as a complete monster, which has actually been the total opposite of what's been in my heart. Your Honor, when I took on Rust, I was young and I was naive, but I took my job as seriously as I knew how to. Despite not having proper time, resources, and staffing, when things got tough, I just did my best to handle it. Today, I humbly ask you to consider probation, a probation where I can contribute to society through community service, and I can continue my counseling, and I welcome any classes that you may deem necessary for me to attend. I give you my word now that I would strictly follow the rules and respect the parameters of that probation. I beg you, please don't give me more time. The jury has found me in part at fault for this god-awful tragedy, but that doesn't make me a monster. That makes me human.
Again, that is Ms. Gutierrez-Reed, 26 years old now, was even younger 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago when this whole thing happened. And I have to tell you, it's always difficult, right? I don't think she was portrayed as a monster. I think there's a reality of life here. And I'm saying this as a dad of someone that's slightly younger than Ms. Gutierrez-Reed. My daughter, my oldest daughter, 22 years old, going to be 23. Very similar in age to her when she was on this movie set. And I think, imagine my kid wants to make movies and be an armorer and, lands this movie with big actors and big producers, directors, etc. And gets involved in something like this. Of course I have compassion and I understand, but of course I understand nobody cares. Something I've told my kids since they were little, I've always said, look, people really don't care about why. If you're driving your car and a kid runs out into the street and God forbid you strike that kid's parents are never going to care about you're sorry. They're not going to care about why you hit their kid. They're only going to care that they don't have their kid anymore. And that's what happened here. And you heard what the judge said to her when she made that plea. The judge said this was done and whatever, and she read her the riot act. And I don't know that Ms. Gutierrez-Reed did this on purpose, but I still, at the outcome of this, I still don't understand why there were real bullets and real guns on a movie set. I just don't know. That's my own ignorance and naivete. I've tried to figure it out, and some people told me they used antique weapons, and some of the antique weapons have to be real. All right. I'm not sold. I'm just not sold. Why do you have to use an antique weapon? Just get a replica antique weapon. It doesn't work. It's a movie. But maybe, what do I know? I'm a radio guy. Bottom line here, this was just tough for everybody. The woman who was killed, the other person who was hit by this. Everybody, I think, got a raw deal here. And not that somebody gave them a raw deal, just it was an unfortunate situation all around. So that's the outcome of this film, Rust, and this young lady, poor young lady, for, whatever her mistake was, a fatal mistake. And the whole thing just sucks all around, in my opinion. We're going to get to the rest of your calls on Trump, on Israel, on the Rust case, and so much more. There's also a couple of stories that I want to share with you that are just, all over the place. We got the Gaza protesters shutting down the Golden Gate Bridge, and with similar protests happening in other areas. My incident on my way to get some pizza. And again, a record number of Chinese illegal immigrants were arrested at the U.S. southern border over a 6-month period. We're going to get to that and more. Don't go anywhere. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And we're going to get to your calls momentarily. Again, if you're a first-time caller, we always get you at the front of the line. If you are a dissenting caller disagreeing with me and we can have a civil conversation, I will definitely move you to the front of the line as well. Regular callers, we love you. We're going to get to you momentarily as well. The phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I know we're working on clarifying something with our phone bank, so be patient with us, but you're going to get on, hopefully. Let's continue. What did I say before the break? I said that there were protests in many places, one of which was the Golden Gate Bridge. And Senator Tom Cotton gave some comments about this protest and how they shut down the bridge. Check this out.
Well, I'm feel very deeply for all those people who are trying to get to work or trying to pick up a kid. Very worried about the diversion of police resources when it needs to be stopping crime in cities like San Francisco, where firefighters are having to go there when they might have calls for fires out. I have to say, Sandra, I agree with you that you have to get to these criminals early. If something like this happened in Arkansas on a bridge there, let's just say I think there'd be a lot of very wet criminals that have been tossed overboard, not by law enforcement, but by the people whose road they're blocking. If they glued their hands to a car or the pavement, well, probably pretty painful to have their skin ripped off. But I think that's the way we'd handle it in Arkansas. And I would encourage most people anywhere that get stuck behind criminals like this who are trying to block traffic to take matters in their own hands. There's only usually a few of them, and there's a lot of people being inconvenienced. It's time to put an end to this nonsense.
Again, that is Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, and I agree with him. Listen, ultimately, I said this before, and I guess it doesn't matter what part of the country you're in, but I know in New York, tempers tend to flare around here, and people tend to be a little bit less patient. And I can only tell you that I think a lot of people accepted a lot of BS during the riots in 2020, but I don't know that people are going to continue to accept that. I don't think they will. Some might, in like Manhattan proper, but I think out in the boroughs we're seeing people pushing back, and ultimately, this can't go on. It can't continue. But the folks today that were shutting down the traffic with this pro-Palestinian protest, it shut down traffic in both directions of the Golden Gate Bridge, according to the California Highway Patrol. They reopened the bridge to southbound traffic shortly after, just after noon, around 12:15, while the northbound traffic was held for several minutes as authorities cleared the staging area that occupied those lanes, and they took it on, they eventually got it. By 1 p.m., everything was kind of cleared up. But my point is, listen, I'm all for a peaceful protest. Everybody should be for a peaceful protest. That's what America's all about. But we're also about getting to work. And this idea of, my protest is going to stop you from getting to work, or like the senator pointed out, going to pick up a kid from daycare or drop him off at school or whatever the case is, not good, right? People aren't going to necessarily sympathize with your cause, necessarily. I'm sure there's some people who go, yeah, absolutely, sure, why not? I'm not sympathizing with that. There's no need, for a place that already has bad enough traffic to have even more traffic when you're trying to make a point. I think people make points about a lot of things. And there's lots of ways to make a point, and this may be one, but not my preferred method of making a point, if you will. Now, the looks at it, there's some reports from the California Highway Patrol and some reaction from folks that were there saying, this is a very unfortunate situation. You got Uber drivers. You've got all sorts of people here that are just saying, it's an inconvenience. It's also inconvenient to be inconvenient to humans that are being held in Gaza. So, some sympathetic folks on this bridge. And I think everybody is sympathetic to human life, right? The question is not human life. The question is, why are you blocking traffic on this bridge? Now, of course, well, Rich, it's a protest. Yeah, I understand. But this doesn't really change anything, right? Other than you screwing over these people that live in California, right? The people in Gaza are not in any better position because of what happened today. I don't believe. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, maybe it's just my own bias. Could be. Ultimately, there are people out there that are shouting, death to America, death to Israel. Others chanting, stop arming Israel. And these were people that were at this rally on the bridge that shut down traffic. And the cops eventually came in and, cleaned this thing up. But it's just one of those things. It's one of those things where, you support their right to say what they have to say, even if you don't agree with them, right? It's like the old Voltaire line. Anyway, I want to get to your calls. Let's go to John. He's in Lorain, Ohio, listening online to KDKA. John, go right ahead.
Yes, I think we're in a very dangerous point in history, and I think the power of the military-industrial complex and its most intense faction, which is, I think, the Israeli Zionist lobby, is going to lead us into dangerous warfare based on a really totally one-sided propaganda through the media in this country. This attempt to call any criticism of Israeli mass murder of 35,000 so far with American 2,000-pound bombs, thousands of 2,000-pound bombs in a tightly packed open-air prison, which people are not allowed to escape from, shooting like fish in a barrel, thousands of men, women, and children and babies. I think has to be put in a different category than calling anyone who criticizes that anti-Semitic. It's a dirty tactic. It's a dirty, filthy tactic to cheap shot any kind of legitimate criticism. We've got the United Nations Secretary General, the South African government calling it genocide, a former...
Yeah, but while we have those governments calling it genocide, we have the folks that are on the ground explaining the nuance to this. Now, listen, I'm not going to say that we should be killing innocent people. I don't think anybody is advocating that, not the Israelis, not anybody else. But the reality, John, is that I believe, and I look at this in layman's terms, and perhaps I'm not as sophisticated and nuanced as you are, but I can tell you if someone came to my house and committed the atrocities that people committed on October 7th with the Israelis, the slitting of throats of infants, setting infants that were alive on fire, kidnapping old women and raping them, holding some of them hostage, taking 12 and 13-year-old girls, raping them, holding them hostage, burning down these kibbutz villages. If someone did that to me, you better believe that I'm dropping every bomb I can drop, and I'm getting everybody, every last one of you. I'm not going to have sympathy for I don't know, if you're part of the problem, you got to go. And I think that's what we're seeing here. While there's collateral damage, and that's a shame, we can't deny Israel a right to strike back. Folks, we continue. Thank you, John. I appreciate your call. Don't go anywhere. Rich Valdez coming right back.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, prison time is on the table here. There are sentencing guidelines. And I would note that Judge Merchan said last year that he regretted agreeing to a 5-month sentence for Trump company CFO Alan Weisselberg for tax crimes, saying he would have imposed a harsher punishment. We never know what a judge is going to decide. Of course, you know that well. But is it conceivable for people watching out there that if he's convicted, Trump could go to jail for this?
He most certainly will go to jail for this because he can't pardon himself. Let me repeat this. He's going to, if he's elected president, I hope that won't take place. He says can pardon himself, and he probably will try, but he cannot pardon. He cannot pardon a criminal conviction by a jury of a state crime. He must go to jail. I would not favor putting him behind bars. I would favor a house arrest, something less than behind bars, because he's an ex-president. But there's no question he will be incarcerated either in house arrest or behind bars if he's convicted.
That is Lanny Davis. You remember him from the Clinton era. He's a legal advisor to Michael Cohen, and he was on MSNBC's Inside with Jen Psaki, silent P, of course, and says Trump must go to jail. You know, what's interesting about this is that the crimes, the quote-unquote crimes that Trump's committed, do they warrant jail? Well, I mean, what they're alleging, sure. Is it going to happen? I don't know. I honestly don't think it is. I don't see this working out in any real long-term kind of way. I mean, you might get a conviction on one of these trials that will eventually get overturned because it doesn't legally make sense. And this is, I don't know, it's a waste of time, but it's effective in interfering in the election. I think that's what we're seeing. But there are so many legal cases out there where people, they absolutely just don't seem to get in trouble for the things they do, right? Or at least we don't see what type of sentencing they get or what, you know. It seems like Donald Trump's the only guy that gets in trouble around here. But look at this one. You've got a mayor in New Jersey accused of beating his teenage daughter and the wife. He didn't beat the wife. It's the mayor and the wife are being accused of beating the kid. Then you've got a Nebraska teacher caught undressed in the back seat of a car with their student. Then you got a South Carolina teacher accused of giving drugs and tobacco to an underage student. And this one got ratted out by her own kids. So you look at these things and you think, come on, what is going on here? Why is it that we're not seeing the justice that we should actually be seeing? Why are people, teachers, of course, people that are entrusted to teach your child, the next generation, why are they not being held accountable? And again, I'm just asking a question. I'm not saying that they're not, per se. I just can't remember the last time I saw a news report that said this teacher was, held accountable by sending them to jail for 400 years on 4 felony counts, 34 charges or whatever it was. No, I've not seen that. So what's up with this double standard? At least, this lack of effective prosecution on cases that, in my opinion, matter more than what a former president did who's running for president again. I asked that question of you, our audience. 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let us go to Ohio, Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Paul, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Good evening, Rich. I had a teacher, actually, in the 8th grade that was hitting on me. I was running the spotlight for a play. I told you that story one time.
Oh, yeah. You actually did. It was a different time back then.
Right, exactly. Now, as far as Trump, this is just a miscarriage of justice. And if you can't see it, everybody can see it in their brother, in my opinion. I mean, it's all politicized, okay? Now, I wanted to address something that the general was talking about and so forth. Here in Zanesville, Ohio, I would say about, 20 miles or so, not even that far, heck, 10 miles, where our major airport is. We just have one major airport. It's not really a big one, but we had a horrific 3 semi crash on Interstate 70. Yeah, and the local news was showing it, and where the guy went through, it looked like, they had an aerial drone up. It was like pretty clear, pretty smooth. He went from one lane, there was nothing, no barriers or nothing, over to the other. Is what it looks like. Now, I could be wrong, because the local news wasn't speculating too much because they don't know a whole lot of details yet. But what I did see was one of the trucks was completely busted open. One was laying across the highway, shut the interstate down for miles and miles and miles. And then your producer, or not your producer, I'm not sure your call taker, he was saying that he came to Zanesville and there's a lot of construction. Well, there is right now in Zanesville for all of our bridges and stuff that go over the famous Y Bridge in Muskingum County, here in Muskingum County. But further east, it's all done. So my thing was, when you was talking about what they did on the bridge today and everything, and then I think about what happened there in Maryland, I at first I said, I think it was Captain Error. But, man, the more I'm seeing this kind of stuff and everything that's happening, I think that there's a little bit of meat right there. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I think you might be onto something, Paul. Unfortunately, these are the things that happen in life sometimes. And it's up to people like you to catch these things and see these things and bring them to light. Otherwise, we're lost. And I think it's not just in that area, whether it's the the suspicious activity you're talking about or anywhere else. We've got problems, right? We've got problems. I was sharing my story that about this guy that cut me off on the road. And, in years past, I might have just thought I was just getting cut off. But now I realize there could be more to this, and there likely is. Why would somebody be so aggressive and so bold in the way they're driving, trying to run other drivers off the road, heading into a red light, other than they're angry and they're emboldened. They think they can get away with it, and they probably can. And it's not the first time I've seen something like this. It's just the first time I was involved in it. And I thought, man, not a good situation for me to be in. But that's where we are. So, Paul, I think you're spot on here. And you got to keep your eyes open, right? And something the General, last time he was on, he mentioned people joining their, whether it's the local militia, search and rescue, whatever group, just to have a plan in place so that people know what to do in the event there's an emergency and know how you're going to respond in the event that, there's some sort of cell that gets activated and all of a sudden you don't want to get caught with your proverbial pants down, so to speak, if that makes any sense. Paul in Zanesville, Ohio, I want to thank you for your call. We're going to continue with your calls from Idaho, from Maine, from Montana, and more. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
This is an assault on America. Nothing like this has ever happened before. There's never been anything like it. Every legal scholar said this case is nonsense. It should never have been brought. It doesn't deserve anything like this. There is no case, and they've said it. People that don't necessarily follow or like Donald Trump said this is an outrage that this case was brought. This is political persecution. This is a persecution like never before. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And again, it's a case that should have never been brought. It's an assault on America. And that's why I'm very proud to be here. This is an assault on our country. And it's a country that's failing. It's a country that's run by an incompetent man who's very much involved in this case. This is really an attack on a political opponent. That's all it is.
There's President Trump making the case for the case against him and his defense of himself, which many judges want to gag him on, where he's not allowed to even speak about himself or about any of the irregularities that go along with some of these cases. But what's interesting to me is, again, I'm looking at these cases. Again, you got a mayor that's been accused of beating their child. I don't see them doing any major hearings, shutting down any campaign for re-election of this guy, just so that they could go after him. Nebraska teacher caught undressed in the back seat of a car with a student. I'm not hearing a whole lot about that either. And we'll get into that momentarily. You got a South Carolina teacher accused of giving drugs and tobacco to an underage student, and they were ratted out by their own kid or their own kids. The whole thing seems selective to me, right? Selective prosecution. And this is where we are. So I'll get into these stories momentarily, but I want to get to some of your calls. I know a lot of you want to disagree with me. Let's go to Frank, Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich.
Hey.
These rebel rousers there in Dearborn, Michigan, whatever.
One's shouting death to America and death to Israel.
Death to America, all that, the Malcolm X bunch, that crowd. If they're so hell-bent on hatred of this continent and this hemisphere of North and South America, Central America, I mean, let them go back to Africa. We're a muumuu, live in the Congo, and see if they can get some organization going on over there and stop slavery over there in Africa. It's still going on. And It's the blacks that are running it over there.
Well, yeah, obviously that's the majority there, and they're in control. And, you know, I'm with you on this. I think anybody who doesn't care for America, if you want to live here, go ahead. I respect your free speech. But my free speech says go somewhere else. I agree with you. If you don't like what America is, go somewhere else. I like what America is. I really do. And I'm not saying it's perfect, and I'm not saying that because I like what America is, I'm tacitly endorsing, X, Y, and Z sin of the week, right? Because, if you like America, then you're a colonial, you're a colonizer sympathizer. No, I don't sympathize with any colonizers. But I can say I sympathize with the American dream, Frank. And like you and so many others, there's too much good going on in our country for me to turn my blind eye or a blind eye and turn my back on this country. It's not something I'm interested in doing. So thank you for your call. I appreciate it. And I just want to share a quick blurb from this story about this Omaha, Nebraska teacher who was arrested early on Saturday morning after being caught undressed with a teenager. Aaron Ward, 45 years old, was booked for one count of felony sexual abuse by a school employee. Douglas County Sheriff deputies responded to a call about a suspicious vehicle that was parked at the end of the road. And when they arrived, deputies saw two individuals in the back seat of an SUV. A 17-year-old male jumped out into the driver's seat and drove the vehicle away from deputies, later crashing the car into a yard a couple of blocks from there. The victim fled on foot, wearing no clothes. Authorities found him about an hour later wearing a T-shirt, boxers, and socks. Deputies made contact with Ward when she was putting her clothes on in the back seat. While searching the car, the deputies found an Omaha Public Schools employee ID card. Ward confirmed that she was a substitute teacher at Omaha Burke High School and other metro area schools. Ward also admitted to having intercourse with the 17-year-old male student, who she said was a student at Burke that she had come into contact with. Ward and the victim were both treated for minor injuries due to the car crash and the flight on foot. The investigation is ongoing, and the Douglas County Sheriff's Office is working closely with other authorities. Now, listen, all I can say is, are they going to be treated like Trump is? This is actually a teacher betraying the public trust, bringing a young man. Now, some might say, oh, come on, Rich. He's 17. He's almost ready to go to war. You're right. And I say, wait a couple of months to this woman, right? If you're a professional educator, you've got to be better than this. I'm not going to sit here and blame a 17-year-old boy. I am going to sit here and blame the teacher who's supposed to be professional. But we continue. Let us go to Portland, Maine, WLOB, and check in with Allison. Allison, go right ahead.
Oh, crud, I don't have much time, do I? Hola. Yeah, I've been away in the West Coast for a while, so I haven't been calling, but I was just wondering, do you ever have anybody talking a little bit about the Palestinian side of things, and not the violence, but just their side of things at all? Because it just seems like you're just completely on the side of Israel. And if Israel just drove all the Palestinians out and declared Greater Israel, on the Gaza Strip and on the West Bank, that you wouldn't be bothered by that. And I find that kind of appalling.
Half of that is true. I think that if Israel wiped out Hamas in its entirety, I would not be bothered by that. I have no reason to believe that Israel has any interest in being in Gaza for any extended period of time. I don't. I think Israel will give that land right back to the Palestinian people. I don't think they're there to take this land for themselves. Israel had control of this land for a very long time and handed it over in 2005 to the Hamas government, who was supposed to provide food and water, safety, security, and economic empowerment for the good people in Gaza. And they failed. And they blame Israel for everything in the United States and, death to America. But ultimately, Hamas failed its people. So, yes, I'm happy to have anybody who's willing to come on the show, like yourself or others who call in with their opinions. As far as guests go, I haven't really had many guests that are interested in coming on because they don't want the difference of opinion with me. And it happens all too often. I've invited Congresswoman AOC. I'll right now publicly invite Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. And if for those of you listening and you know her or you have access to her or you want to tweet at her and tag her on a post, let her know. She has an open invitation here. I'm happy to have a conversation with her. I am on the side of Israel because I believe Israel was not the aggressor here. And I don't buy the rhetoric. I don't believe that you can say, look, the reason we went and we slit the throats of babies on October 7th was because, back in the days, this used to be our land and we were pushed out and we're still mad about that. And listen, there have been all sorts of injustices done to lots of people in society. And you do not see generations of people time and again going on generation after generation, just continually saying that this is the problem, this is why we're going to go and burn infants alive. That happened on October 7th. To me, that is atrocious behavior. It's absolutely evil. And that can only be repaid with what Israel is doing. Right? How else do you respond to evil like that, Allison? I don't know. But I do know that it has to be eradicated. It has to be eliminated. It has to be removed. Now, do I condone the killing of innocent men, women, and children? No. I do think that the Jordanians and Egyptians should open their borders for these innocent people. Otherwise, they're just as complicit as Hamas. And guess what? They're not letting any of the Palestinians into their country. I wonder why. We'll continue straight ahead. Thank you, Allison.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We go straight to the phones to wrap up this edition of Open Phone America. And we go to Paul, Boise, Idaho, listening on KBOI. Go ahead, Paul, quickly.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich. There's too many coincidences that happened during this fight. All those drones, every single one of them got shot down. I mean, the wind speed, the direction, the height off the ground, they knew all that.
Yeah. So what do you think?
I think it was orchestrated.
Of course it was orchestrated. Iran is trying to get them. Folks, hasta la próxima. Until the next time, I am Rich Valdez. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. Paul, thank you for your call. The music means I had to go. I'll see you tomorrow, America. God willing.